Hello, my name is Petty Officer Foley. I'm here today to chat with you a little bit about the nuclear power in itself, talk about some of the benefits that nuclear power presents not only for the country but as for the world, and also talking about some of the career opportunities the Navy has to offer for a young adult that wants to go into the nuclear field, nuclear engineering or power generating side for an engineering career background. So a little bit backstory on me. So I've been in the Navy for about 8.5 years. I'm originally from West Virginia, small little town in West Virginia. I depped in Winchester, Virginia. So been it all throughout the world. However, I started my Navy journey down in Charleston, South Carolina at Navy Nuclear Power School. After that, I went to Norfolk, Virginia, where I was stationed on board a Virginia-class submarine for 5 years, and now I'm the nuclear field coordinator for NTAG Richmond. So nuclear power in itself, what exactly is it? It is a method of generating electricity, a means of powering large vessels such as submarines and aircraft carriers. That is how the Navy is powering our large asset ships. The whole method driving force behind this is nuclear fission. And nuclear fission in itself, there's 4 steps to nuclear fission. So you have uranium-235 absorbs a slow-moving neutron. It then becomes at an excited state to become uranium-236. Now, this isotope is highly unstable. It doesn't want to stay at this uranium-236. So then it's going to go and split into 2 separate fission products. And when it does so, it's going to eject 2 to 3 more neutrons. And this is going to create a chain reaction that will go on and not be inhibited unless we have something to prevent that from happening. Now, when these atoms do split, there is tons and tons of energy behind it, and we use that to translate the thermal energy to then provide electricity, and we'll talk about that here shortly. So why are we so invested in nuclear energy? Well, because there is so much energy in a small amount of fuel. So 1 gram of uranium-235 produces 24,000 kilowatt hours of energy. That's the equivalent of 3 tons of coal, 600 gallons of oil, or 50,000 cubic feet of natural gas. How long can 1 pound of coal power a 100-watt light bulb? Approximately 9 hours. That same light bulb can be powered by 1 pound of uranium for 3,000 years. So very efficient method. So that chain reaction we were talking about earlier, the method that we control that is using control rods. So if you look in the simplified diagram I have here, the red rectangles, those are the fuel assemblies. Up top we have the control rods, and we move the control rods up and down to act as a poison. They absorb those fissioning reactions. So the more that the fuel is exposed, the surface area of those fuel assemblies are exposed, the more chain reactions that are happening, more fission events that's creating more power for the nuclear power plant. Now, if we insert the control rods within the core, we are killing that chain reaction, preventing that chain reaction from going on, to then minimize the amount of nuclear energy output. So how does a nuclear reactor generate electricity? In simple terms, we boil water. That's the name of the game. We produce heat via fission, all that thermal energy when those neutrons cause those fission products to split. Tons of energy given off there. We use that heat to boil water into steam. We use that steam to spin a turbine generator, and that's the same process that a solar thermal plant, natural gas plant, coal, or even an oil plant does. They use steam generators. They heat that up, make the water inside turn to steam, and that's exactly what we're doing, but using nuclear fission to do so. So here I have a simplified diagram of a nuclear reactor plant. This is a civilian nuclear power plant. This is a pressurized water reactor system. So if you look on the red dotted lines, we'll say this is our primary system. The blue dotted lines, that's our secondary system. So one thing to note, the primary plant, it's 2 separate water sources. So the red dotted line does not mix with the secondary water source, because we do not want primary coolant to go into the engine room where personnel work, right? So inside the reactor vessel, that is where the fission events are happening. That's where we heat up that water source. It is then going to be transferred to the steam generator, which is going to heat up that secondary water source, force it to go through a phase change to create steam. Now, once that steam or that water has then cooled down, we want to pump that back into the reactor to then heat it back up, and it's a continuous cycle. Now, that steam that we generated, it's going to travel. It has tons and tons of energy. It has a very high potential. It's then going to go to a turbine, which is going to go and interact with a bunch of turbine blades, create rotational mechanical energy to then go to a generator, produce electricity, then power our cities. Now, once that exhausted steam has lost all its energy, we want to reuse that steam, so we're going to force it to go through a phase change. So we're going to pump a secondary water source through a condenser to make it go from steam to then water back again. We're going to pump that water source back to the steam generator and start that process over. It's a very, very efficient system, very minimal losses that we are using here. So what are some of the other benefits that nuclear power has to offer? So nuclear power plants emit far fewer atmospheric pollutants than the competition. They do not emit sodium dioxide, nitrogen oxide, or dust from burning fuel. Navy nuclear propulsion reactors have long core lives, so that refueling is needed after approximately only 10 years. Newer designs can go anywhere between 25 to 30 years without needing to be refueled. So this means we have continuity of power at all times. We are not having to take our reactor plant down at any given time to need to be refueled. So long periods of time without any interruptions in our power sources. One nuclear power plant generates twice as much electricity in 1 month as a coal-fired plant generates in a whole year. So in comparison to our carbon-emitting counterparts, nuclear power plants are a clean form of energy that we can use to power the country. So here I have some fact or fiction. So nuclear power does have a negative stigma when it comes to it. However, with educating the public, nuclear power is one of the safest, if not the safest, forms of electricity power generation that we have in the country and throughout the world. Americans get most of the yearly radiation dose from nuclear power plants. That's actually really false. So we are surrounded by naturally occurring radiation at all times. 0.005% of the average American's yearly radiation dose comes from nuclear power. That's 100 times less than we get from coal, 200 times less than a cross-country flight, and about the same as eating one banana per year. A nuclear reactor can explode like a nuclear bomb. This is often a common public misconception with nuclear energy. It is impossible for a reactor to explode like a nuclear weapon. These weapons contain very specific materials and very particular configurations, neither of which are present in a nuclear reactor. It is physically impossible for a nuclear power plant to explode in the same manner that a nuclear weapon can. Nuclear energy is not safe. Nuclear energy is safer than any other energy available. No member of the public has ever been injured or killed in the entire 50-year history of commercial nuclear power in the United States. In fact, recent studies have shown it is safer to work in a nuclear power plant than in an office. So here I have a quote from a professor at Columbia University. He stated, "Life on Earth has developed with an ever-present background of radiation. It is not something new and invented by the wit of man. Radiation has always been there." So radiation has been there before humans existed on Earth, and they will be here after we are gone. We are constantly exposed by radiation at all times. So this is either cosmic radiation from the sun or naturally occurring radiation in the ground. Even our fruits and vegetables that are planted in the ground, they could be exposed to radiation that could be in the soil as well. Some of the chemicals that we use have nuclear isotopes within them. So we are exposed to radiation at all times. So once again, it's all about being informed about radiation, knowing the safety requirements that go behind it. However, if we are often exposed with too much radiation, there could be biological effects that could be negative, right? So radiation can kill or destroy cells, lead to genetic defects, and cancer. That is if you are bombarded with too much radiation, exposed with too much radiation. Now, working in the federal government, and any civilian nuclear power plant is regulated by the federal government. They have imposed upon any member working at their nuclear power plant says, hey, you cannot exceed more than 5,000 millirem per year. Now, the Navy said for their sailors, they cannot exceed 500 millirem per year. And millirem is just the unit that we measure the amount of radiation dose to the body. However, on a command level, they take that one step further. They say, hey, any member that's working on a nuclear power plant at our command, you cannot exceed 100 millirem per year, which is an extremely low value. Average American's exposure per year, so the average American in the United States receives roughly about 360 millirem per year. Now, every time you go to the doctor's office, the dentist office, and you receive an x-ray, every x-ray that you receive or have taken, there's 60 millirem per each x-ray, which is normal. We're allowed, our bodies are built to withstand a certain amount of radiation. Smokers, so if you know anyone that smokes, on average they receive 1,300 millirem per year, and that is simply from the fact of the tobacco that goes into the cigarettes could have radiation from the soil or the chemicals that are within the cigarettes in themselves, and then that goes into their lungs, and that's why lung cancer can come into play for smokers. So just a fact for you. So how do we contain radiation in the reactor? So containment is the reaction, and its associated radiation is the most important part of reactor design. So we build our plants in specific ways to prevent any sort of radiation from leaking out. So we have different types of forms of containment. We have primary containment, which is the actual reactor components themselves, the materials that we used in the reactor vessel, in the fuel materials, in the piping in itself to prevent radiation from leaking out. Now we have secondary containment, which is the reactor compartment, the structure that goes around the reactor vessel, and we can build this to make sure no radiation can leak out and harm not only the workers within the nuclear power plant, but also the general public. So there are different types of radiation that we need to be concerned about, right? We have alpha radiation, beta radiation, and gamma radiation. Now looking at this diagram, alpha particles can be stopped by simply our skin. So alpha particles cannot penetrate through our skin. Beta particles, we are protected by our clothing, so beta particles cannot get through our clothing. However, gamma particles, radiation, that has very high energy, so it can travel through our clothes and through our skin, so that's why we are concerned about it bombarding our bodies. However, lead is what we use to prevent that from leaking out when we go into the design structure of our containment. That's also why when you receive an x-ray at the doctor's office, for any parts of the body that you don't want to be exposed by the x-ray, they put a lead vest on you to prevent that exposure from that radiation. So something else that is often a concern when in regards to nuclear power is radioactive waste. What do we do with it? What are the concerns? So radioactive waste can exist for different periods of time. It depends on the half-life of the product. So that is the actual decay it takes for it to reduce the radiation by half. So some different waste products can go a few decades. So some of it can go to millions of years without being a risk to the public. It can be made safer if stored properly. So when it goes to any nuclear waste, we can recycle about a quarter of that to go into new nuclear fuel. It can be recycled to go back into our nuclear power plants. The remaining waste, we have to store it. So it's stored in secured facilities, making sure we do not have any sort of risk to the public from leaking out. So, like I said, I work for the United States Navy. I'm the nuclear coordinator here at NTAG Richmond, but also the entity that I work for is Naval Reactors. So this is the world's leading organization in nuclear power. We have been 100% accident-free. We have been operating for over 6,500 reactor years. We have had 166 million miles steamed throughout the entire ocean, so that's the amount of miles our submarines and aircraft carriers have traveled under nuclear power. Currently in our fleet, we have 71 submarines, 11 aircraft carriers, and we use pressurized water reactors. So some of the things we have been called upon outside of our scope of nuclear power, NASA, they adopted our quality assurance program after the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. So when that incident occurred, they wanted to do a deep dive into figuring out what exactly happened, and they realized it was a component failure. So they had to figure out where did that part come from, who inspected the part, and everything. So they took our quality assurance program we use in our nuclear department and implemented it for NASA. Also, when the Fukushima reactor accident happened in Japan, they called upon naval reactors to help respond and provide technical support and assistance to combat that casualty over in Japan to prevent radiation from being harmful to the public. So we were operating 93 reactors worldwide with a history of 68 years operating reactors. Why is this the case? Training. We have to have highly skilled and trained operators to do this. We have to go through 2 years of dedicated schooling to learn the ins and outs of how a nuclear power plant works. This program was created by Admiral Hyman G. Rickover. He is the father of the nuclear Navy. He joined the Navy back in World War II. He was enlisted, then he went to the Naval Academy, become a commissioned officer, and then he saw how we were using the nuclear technology for nuclear weapons, and he saw how we can implement that in nuclear power plants and specifically on board submarines. So he led the development and design of the first nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Nautilus. So the Navy Nuclear Propulsion Program is the most technical program the United States military has to offer. There is no other organization in the world that allows young 20-year-olds to operate, maintain, and supervise a nuclear power plant. It simply doesn't exist. So we are nuclear operators. We are the ones controlling reactor power in the power plant, monitoring all the equipment, doing maintenance, both preventative and corrective maintenance on these nuclear power plants. So you get different certifications, training, knowledge in that particular field to make you a valuable asset in the civilian sector when you do get out of the military. So what does it take a young adult in high school to qualify for this program? So you must graduate from high school. You must be a United States citizen. You can also be a naturalized citizen as well. Get good grades in math and science. Have completed at least 1 year of Algebra 1 with a C average or higher. Limited civil involvement, no unpaid speeding tickets, no unpaid parking tickets, being arrested, no financial issues. Score very well on the ASVAB. So if you've taken the ASVAB before, we're looking for line scores that are ranging between 70 all the way up to the max score of 99. If you're unfamiliar with what the ASVAB is, it is the military's version of the ACT or SAT. It is also an aptitude test. It'll tell you what you are good at, what skills that you're good at. So if you're looking for looking to go to college after high school, this might tell you what field you might want to try and get a degree in. Also, you can't be colorblind in this particular program. So what are some of the benefits that a young adult can have going into this program? So we go in at a pay grade of E3. That is 2 pay grades higher than any of the rest of your peers joining out of high school. Currently, there is a $60,000 sign-on bonus to join right out of high school. $60,000 bonus. There, no college out there, no employer out there is willing to give a young 17, 18-year-old this much money to go to school. Additionally, at your 2-year point, you could be eligible for a re-enlistment bonus up to $100,000. So if you're joining out of high school, you're 18, you could potentially be looking at age 20 with $160,000 of bonus allotment strictly from the Navy Nuclear Power Program. We get paid to go to school. So, we have to go through 2 years of schooling to learn the ins and outs of how a nuclear power plant works. We get a monthly paycheck, the bonus allotment as well. You get a housing stipend, a food stipend. You receive health care. You get 30 days paid vacation. And you also start on a 401k retirement with a partial match. So tons of benefits for a young adult to start a career. Once you pass the first phase of schooling, which can last anywhere between 3 to 6 months after boot camp, they're going to give you an automatic promotion to E4. That comes with a pay raise as well. For the school in itself, you earn 70 to 90 college credits. They're ACE accredited, so they're transferable to any university. So that puts you halfway, if not 3/4 of the way, towards a bachelor's degree. If you want to finish your bachelor's degree while you're in the Navy, you absolutely can do so. No money out of your pocket using tuition assistance. A lot of individuals in the nuclear program either try and get a nuclear engineering technology degree, or they can get a degree in other fields. I just recently wrapped up a bachelor's in mathematics, and I didn't have to pay for it, and I still have my GI Bill that I plan on using for a postgraduate degree. Now, if you're looking for officer opportunities, commissioning opportunities, there's 2 different ones for a high schooler to apply out of nuke school. One is State 21, which is Seaman to Admiral. The other one is getting picked up for the Naval Academy. Applicants applying out of nuke school last application cycle had greater than a 50% pickup rate because they know we are a higher aptitude of individuals going through this particular program. So the chances to get selected to become an officer out of nuke school for applicants putting in a package is relatively high. So here I have a few images of civilian nuclear power plants throughout the country. Once again, a lot of common misconception when the public sees these towers. They think that smoke coming from the towers, that is simply the water vapor coming from the steam coming from those cooling towers. So no atmospheric pollutants coming from nuclear power plants. So as a Navy, why are we so concerned about nuclear power? Why did we want to have that on board? So back in World War II, submarines were powered by diesel engines and were limited to the amount of time they could be submerged by using batteries. Now with the nuclear power, we can go 40 years without needing to be refueled. We're kind of limited by the amount of food that we can bring on board. That's what we are restricted by. However, if needed be, we can stay out there for long periods of time. Additionally, an aircraft carrier, now using a nuclear power plant, we can carry twice the amount of aircraft fuel. So this is to allow more fighter jets to be launched off the aircraft carrier to then protect our ground troops on the front lines. So that's a good positive plus there. Nuclear power is also cleaner and quieter, and it lasts longer than other fuels. I will say nuclear power plants are definitely a lot quieter than diesel engines, and the whole reason a submarine's mission is to be quiet. They don't want to be detected. So having a nuclear power plant makes it a vital asset for our Navy. So here I have a couple images of aircraft carriers and submarines. Aircraft carriers are huge. They're like floating cities. There's about 4,000 to 5,000 individuals on board at any given time. You still have all the same amenities that you're accustomed to. There's about 5 to 6 different gyms. There's areas where you can go rest and have relaxation. You're still able to communicate back home, email, Skype, Facebook. You still message with your families back home. There's even a Starbucks on an aircraft carrier. Now, submarines, they're a little bit different. So it's more of a tight-knit environment, more of a family environment. There's only about 120 individuals on board a submarine at any given time. So once again, very strong camaraderie. It's a small community within the Navy itself. And these are the 2 different platforms of ships that contain nuclear power plants. So in order to have these different types of ships going out to sea, we have to have very highly skilled and trained operators to allow these ships to go out at sea. Without qualified nuclear operators, these ships couldn't go and protect our nation's waters. So here I have a different image of all the different sub bases and aircraft carrier bases throughout the country, different nuclear installations that you could be stationed at throughout the country. So if you're looking to stay local to the state of Virginia, you can go to Norfolk, Virginia. It's the largest naval base in the world. If you want to go out to the West Coast, San Diego, California, and then if you really want to go out and see the world, you can be stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. Now, here's a map of the world where all the civilian nuclear power plants are located. So there's quite a bit of nuclear power plants in the United States, a lot all throughout Europe, and as well as Japan. So within the nuclear program in itself, there's 3 different types of nuclear jobs. First is being a machinist mate nuclear. They deal with the maintenance and upkeep of the reactor fluid systems as well as the engine room propulsion systems. So they do supervise, take logs, making sure the instrumentations are operating, making sure the plant is operating how it should, and also conducting different plant evolutions and also conducting preventative and corrective maintenance on these particular systems. Electricians mate, so the nuclear power plant itself generates a lot of electricity, and we have to have continuity of power at all times. So these sit in different watch stations to where they ensure that there's power distribution all throughout the ships at any given time. They also deal with maintenance on electrical systems from 30 volts all the way up to 700 volts. So they earn the equivalent of journeyman's electrician's license from simply doing their job. Now, electronics technicians, those are the individuals sitting in the reactor operator chair controlling reactor power. They also do maintenance and upkeep of reactor safety systems, so they might have to troubleshoot different PCMs, circuit cards, and these are very expensive pieces of equipment, and they have to be system matter experts on these different electrical circuitry. So our school campus that we go to is located in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a beautiful location. There's 3 different phases of schooling. So the first phase is A school. That is where you learn your basic fundamentals for those 3 different jobs. Once you graduate that phase of schooling, you get automatically promoted to E4. Now, the nuclear power school is the next phase. That lasts 6 months for any of the 3 jobs. Now, that is where you're learning math, physics, reactor plant design and operation, everything that goes into a nuclear power plant to understand the theory behind it. So the majority of that 70 to 90 college credits is coming from that 6-month course. Now, the next phase of schooling is called Nuclear Power Training Unit, and that's 6 months as well. So before they actually send you out to the fleet to work on an aircraft carrier or submarine, they want you to have real-life experience. So there's handful of training nuclear platforms down in Charleston, South Carolina, allow you to get hands-on experience before you actually go and operate a multi-billion-dollar, if not trillion-dollar piece of machinery. So here is a visual image of our campus. So this is Nuclear Power School. In the center is the schoolhouse, the large building. Just up and to the right of that is the gymnasium. Then up and to the left is a cafeteria, and all those buildings that look like X's, those are the dormitories. So it's a community college campus feel to it. So everything is centralized there, and that is your 2 years in Charleston, South Carolina. There's about 3 to 4 different beaches, all within a 30-minute drive of this campus. There's tons of things to see and do. There's a shopping mall, all the different types of stores that you're accustomed to, all within less than a 10-minute drive of this campus. So some of the college credits that you receive, here is from the electronics technician nuclear that you can receive, and they're transferable to any university. So DC circuits, AC circuits, general physics, microprocessors, project management, nuclear reactor engineering. So there are upper level college credits that you can apply towards a bachelor's degree. So the nuclear program in itself, just based on the training, certifications, and knowledge that you receive, makes you a vital asset for when you do get out of the military. When you do get out, even without a bachelor's degree, companies will hire you making anywhere between $90,000 to $120,000 starting salary. Realistically, it's just where you want to work at when you get out of the military. And if you do finish a bachelor's degree, your salary will tend to jump up an extra $10,000 to $15,000. We have dedicated job forum groups because the nuclear Navy, we are a small community within the Navy, so we have headhunters that look for us all the time, different Facebook groups, so different postings all throughout the day. And I have some examples here, some of those different job postings throughout the country. The 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, he went through the Navy Nuclear Propulsion Program, and he quoted, "Next to my parents, the Navy Nuclear Power Program had the greatest effect on my life." So if you do have any questions regarding this PowerPoint, if you would like to learn more about the Navy Nuclear Propulsion Program, feel free. Here's my contact information. Give me a phone call, shoot me a text message, even send an email regarding your questions, and I will respond to you in a timely manner. Thank you for allowing me to present, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.